Made for Me, Chapter 14. Andre veered sharply to the right, and her inner thigh muscles instinctively tightened against the metal. Up he went, each steep hill followed by a flat intersecting road, one after the other, until he reached a plateau. He slowed to a stop where a gap in the homes and trees afforded a 180-degree view of the water. He flipped up his visor, suggesting she do the same. "That's unbelievable," Danielle breathed. Andre explained the lakeside communities to the south had their own townships, and then around the southern bend of the lake was mostly marshes. The opposite side of Lake Zurich was a blend of very new and modern condos scrunched against gray warehouses of steel and cement. "Your flat is excellent because the entire town can be reached in 10 minutes or less, and the clubs, they're on either side just off the main street." "Is everything in the city that close?" she asked dubiously. He turned around, his hand on his hip. "Zurich isn't all that big," he told her, his glacier blue eyes seeming to ripple with color. "It's not as big as, say, Portland by comparison." "Is that so?" For the next hour, Andre drove up and down the hills, pointing out the zoo and telling her about the districts within the city. "You lean well," he said out of the blue. "What types of bike did you ride growing up?" "The type that worked best in mud and dirt." "No street riding?" "No. Dad drilled into my head that trees don't usually jump out at you and kill you. Cars and buses do that." "Then why are you on the bike with me?" "Because I trust you." He touched her knee. "Thank you. I appreciate that." Danielle enjoyed the seeds of happiness his acknowledgement had planted inside, and then felt her stomach rumble. "Okay, I'm finally hungry now." Over plates of fresh buffalo mozzarella and tomatoes, she got to know her bike-riding dancing friend, for that's the definition and the category she put him in. A friend to dine, dance, and play with, the definition of the latter being broad and fluid. "Why do you love American things so much?" she asked him, beyond the muscle cars. It's mostly the culture. The attitude of the most Americans is more carefree than here, less inhibited. Even those of us who leave and return have changed. Look at Giles. He had been on the path to become an accountant, and he returned a beach guy. I eat and drive what I really like, which is American." "Have you ever been with an American girl before?" Andre lifted a dark eyebrow. "I've never dated one before, no. But if this continues, I'll have the best parts of your country without crossing the borders." Danielle caught the play of words in his answers. "Well, other than my dark looks, I'm not sure I'm all that different from the lovely Swiss ladies I see on every corner." Andre paused. "It's hard to describe to a person who's grown up with it, but you are very different. For example, you were completely soaked and didn't care about taking off your wetsuit on the boardwalk in front of anyone. And then out of the back room, you emerge with your hair half done and hop on a motorcycle." Danielle replayed the entire image as he said it, cocking her head. "Yes, but you already know what's underneath. I had nothing to hide." He smiled. "And at the club, you were uninhibited there too." She smirked. "I had good reason." She thought her comment would generate a knowing smile, but instead, Andre turned thoughtful. "The simple act of being is sometimes the hardest for people, don't you think? Particularly if they are used to putting up a front. I suspect you don't." "Don't what? Put up a front?" She recalled how she'd been completely at ease dancing and kissing him, uncaring if others were looking. But then, in the States, kissing on the dance floor isn't all that remarkable. "Is that okay? I mean, does it make you uncomfortable?" "What, you being direct and unfettered?" "No, I love it. And I like that you're beautiful in your most natural state." "The wet cat look does fit me," she playfully agreed. He fixed his gaze on her, humor replaced with concentration. A new thought occurred to her. "You know what?" she said in an undertone. Andre raised an eyebrow inquisitively. "I think you are a closet American wanting to bust out of this culture but can't, so you seek out as crazy foreigners to give you a sense of life on the outside, a temporary thrill." Andre's eyebrow raised higher. "Do I come across as a temporary thrill type of guy?" "Sort of, but then I'm no expert in reading the signals from my sample set of one." In truth, she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Some things were best left undiscussed. Beeping from Andre's hip interrupted the moment. She motioned for him to take it. "Go ahead, I'm not offended." She had a few bites of her meal as he read his text. When he looked up, he wore an expression of sincere regret. "The singular tragedy of meeting you is that it's happened at the start of the busiest time for us." That's not such a bad thing, she thought, taking another bite of food. The waiter returned and Andre signed the check, his hand resting on her lower back as she led the way to the door. Danielle hesitated as she looked outside. Uh-oh. Andre peered over her shoulder. It was pouring. Ready for some wetness? He asked her. She swallowed. Absolutely. Andre dashed out in the rain, motioning to her the moment he picked up the helmets. Danielle quickly fastened her strap as she got on the bike. Andre eased out the second her hands were around his waist. By the time he drove the bike up the lane, the top of her jeans were soaked through. The consolation was the rain was more of a drizzle, and it was warm, like when a flash downpour occurred in the tropics, and 10 minutes later the sun was shining. She glanced towards the Alps and saw the system was already passing through. In another hour, it would be nice again, and Andre would be on a boat. He flipped up the visor when she got off, and he handed him the helmet. Thanks for the ride. It was amazing. He started to get off, but she put her hand on his shoulder. Stay. I don't want you to be late. Reluctantly, he nodded and flipped the visor down, slowly pulling the bike around in a U. She waved, expecting him to continue down the hill. Instead, he turned in another U, pulling right up alongside her. Andre straddled the bike, his wet jeans sticking to his muscular thighs. He removed his helmet, placing it in the handlebar, and tugged at the bottom of her jacket, pulling her towards him. The thrill of his touch lit a flame in her chest that shot up to her throat. Danielle's hands went to his collar, curling around the leather tightly as their lips met, and Danielle felt the water move between their skin. See you tonight? He murmured, his lips sensually brushing the wet off her face. Danielle inhaled his breath, pressing hard against his lips. Her fingers gripped tightly, wanting him so bad she saw lightning in her mind's eye. It might be after dinner, he mumbled. I'll bring food. No, she whispered. I'll make some. Andre rumbled an affirmative before he lightly kissed the water from her nose. Then he quickly put on his helmet and put his motorcycle into gear. Danielle walked back to her door, glancing over her shoulder for a wave. Andre's visor was raised, and she caught one last look of those glacier blue eyes telling her all she needed to know.